just want to illustrate the different parts of ourselves. So we are made up of what is called the inner adult, the inner parent, and the inner child. There are terms that I'm sure many of you have heard: the id, ego, superego. The Bible talks about our inner man being strengthened and knowing God's love. And the Bible talks about many different parts of us: heart, soul, mind, body, spirit. So these are 3 parts that I want to talk about, because we want to work on not only connecting with other people, but with ourselves. Because of the shame, we often do not have a good relationship with ourselves inside. So the inner adult is like your cognitive part, okay? And it is the part of you that can evaluate things in your mind. And it is the part of you that is termed the mediator. This, by the way, is called transactional analysis theory. Now, this is a very comfortable place to be. It's a place where we're just thinking. Often when we're in school, or if you're in church and you're thinking and you're writing and you're learning, it's a very comfortable place to be. There's no emotion here. The inner parent is the part of you where you internalize introjects or messages, okay? So here would be the voice of your mother, maybe the voice of your father, teachers, all kinds of messages that you have taken in. So it's not really you, but it's where you've internalized messages. Whether you agree with the messages or not, they have been internalized. So they come from outside of ourselves. So let's just say this parent here gave you the message that you have to be perfect to be accepted, right? You have to be perfect. Now, the inner child is the part of you that reacts to those messages that you grew up with. It's a very emotional part of you. So it's connected here. And let's just look at this one. You have to be perfect to be accepted. There can be different emotional states or parts of your inner child that come from that one message. See, one part can really strive to perform and be filled with fear of not measuring up, right? Now, another part that you might not be in touch with when you're striving to perform will be an angry part that says, hey, what about me? Why do I always have to do all this for everybody else? So there can be an angry part over here. And then there's usually another part that gets really tired of pushing and prodding and trying to please everyone. And that part often just wants to give up or escape or run away or go to addictions. So it's a very tired part. So you see that internally, from a message growing up, we can have all these different feeling states. And that's called the inner child part of us. Now let's say you have an absent parent. Maybe you never knew one of your parents. Maybe one of your parents left or even died or was very busy. And it's almost like what you've internalized is a place of emptiness, is a place of absence. And over here, the connection to the inner child would probably be a part of you, of course, that would feel abandoned, that would feel empty, and would probably have messages like, well, I guess I'm unwanted, and I'm not good enough. So this would be a part of you that feels abandoned. And that would feel shame because of it. So what happens is we internalize messages that we grew up with, which in turn affect how we feel. It's important to see that these messages, what these messages are, and change destructive beliefs such as I'm unwanted, or I exist only if I'm sexualized. People who experienced abandonment as children and as a result felt unwanted, invisible, and powerless can find it quite addicting as teens to finally feel visible, wanted, or powerful when they are sexualized. It can be very difficult to stop sexual behavior, whether it's flirting, dressing a certain way, or actually acting out sexually, if that is the only way a person knows how to feel visible, wanted, powerful, or loved. Without the sexual behavior, they then again feel the shame or emptiness of their childhood. However, once they feel they can no longer control their sexual behavior, then they feel even more shame. So there can be an introject here from your childhood, and then there can be introjects there from your teenage years as well. In childhood, when pain and shame are so great, often parts of our inner child are split off from the rest of us. So let's say there's an angry part here, that's kind of split off from the rest of us because it's so great. We kind of push it away subconsciously because we don't know how to deal with that pain. So we can be very unaware of these wounded, hurting parts of us. Triggers, however, expose that pain. We need to learn to face the pain and allow our inner child to have a voice and to grieve. We need to allow this part that felt abandoned and hurt to actually work through that grief. This part that felt angry and used and unappreciated to work through that. We can help these wounded parts of us to feel visible, wanted, and loved when we listen and pay attention to them. It's a process called reparenting. Our adult self, can give to our inner child what we so desperately needed as children. Our inner child needs to know that he's loved by our adult self, that his feelings and his pain matter and will be listened to by our adult self. The inner child cannot make the decisions about our life, but he can have a voice and influence. We can learn to connect with and learn to love our inner child and inner teenager. These parts can then be integrated with the rest of us. Instead of being isolated and cut off, having a life of their own. Because what happens is people go about their day, they're doing fine, suddenly there's a trigger that they don't understand, and all of a sudden they feel like they're this teenager again, and they feel drawn to this sexual addiction, and they don't even know what happened. They're having a good day going about their work, and suddenly they feel like they're in a bubble or in a trance or something, and they're drawn to something. And what it often is they've gotten in touch with the trigger into a part of themselves from the past. And they're having, again, remember from the trigger presentation, they're having feelings, thoughts, and reactions from the past. Now, journaling is a way to allow these wounded parts of us to have a voice. If you experience an intense emotion such as anger, anxiety, or sadness, and you don't understand what the feeling is about, you can say, I want to hear what this part of me is feeling and thinking. You are an important part of me. Then you can write the response or just listen what's going on inside of yourself. Remember, feelings are not to be judged, but listened to. Shame messages and other distorted thinking and beliefs can be challenged, but the feelings, such as mad, sad, or scared, they need to be heard and validated. We can learn to be both loving and firm with ourselves. We can tell our inner child or inner teen that we understand that she's in a lot of pain and wants to go to the addiction, but we will not allow her to because it's not in her best interest. She may be upset about it, but the adult part of you needs to learn to be in control of your decisions, not the inner child or inner teenager. So you see, we need to make a connection with these parts of us. We need to evaluate what these messages are. We need to change this message to say, you don't have to be perfect to be accepted. You are loved and valuable just as you are. It's okay to make mistakes. And then we need to be able to listen to these parts and correct their shame messages. So there's agreement between all three, and that is a process. So after we have connected with this part of ourselves, we can then bring this wounded part to God, asking His Spirit to bring comfort and truth into these deep places. We not only need to be connected with others and with our emotional selves, but we also need to connect our emotional selves with God. Remember, He doesn't just want us to love Him with our mind, but also with our heart and soul. Now, Larry Crabb, in his book Inside Out, talks about 3 longings humans have for. First of all, we have what are called crucial longings. And those longings are for spiritual wholeness. So those are spiritual longings. Then we have critical longings. And that is, we long for good relationships with people. And finally, we have what are called casual longings. And those are longings for physical comfort, right? So as humans, we have all 3 longings. Now, when it comes to crucial longings, the spiritual longings that we have, people tend to look to sources other than God. We tend to look to people or things or money for satisfaction. As children, we first look to our parents for these crucial longings, who are never perfect. Then we tend to look to others and things in this world for help or relief. However, only a relationship with God can meet these crucial needs, these core longings for perfect love and for perfect attachment. We will become demanding, addicted, and feel it's never enough when we look to anything outside of God for this level of need. Only God can satisfy at the crucial level.